Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Repeat After Me, yo soy William y en el día de hoy tenemos una invitada muy especial, ella se llama Phylecia, ella es americana, estudiante de español, también con Lupita, y vamos a hablar un poco sobre carreras. Phylecia, thank you very much for accepting the invitation to take part in this interview. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Felicia, listen, first question that I want to ask, and people want to know as well, a little bit about your background. Can you tell us what did you study? How was it? When?
Yes. So I studied pharmacy, so I'm a pharmacist. And pharmacy has different pharmacy has different things within it. So
Okay.
you can be a hospital pharmacist, you can be what's called a retail pharmacist, so like a pharmacist in the community who gives prescriptions.
Mhm.
Hospital pharmacist usually processes the orders that the doctors in the hospital write for. So the medications are different in the hospital than what's in the community, because in the hospital you use like sterile compounds, intravenous IV medication.
I understand perfectly. And let me ask you, how did you decide to study this career, and when was it? You were younger? How was?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I volunteered at a pharmacy. It was a community pharmacy. I volunteered. It's actually called Walgreens. You may have seen commercials or not. They're pretty popular pharmacy here they're a national chain here in the US.
Okay,
So before that, I volunteered at a hospital as a 16-year-old. I volunteered at a hospital.
that's nice.
It was really helping to transport people. But one of my friends got the opportunity to shadow another pharmacist in the hospital. So one day we spent some time watching the pharmacist to see what they do. And so in that moment, that's when I decided, okay, this is something that I would want to do. So I ended up getting a job as a pharmacy technician. So as a pharmacy technician, it's less time, it's less study time. Usually it takes about anywhere between 6 months to a year if you're in a program. But in the state of Florida, because all of the states have different laws, in the
Okay.
state of Florida, you don't have to go to school to become a pharmacy technician. You can actually just take the exam. You can study and then just take the exam. If you pass the exam, then you get your certificate. So I studied, to become a pharmacy technician. And then I went off to pharmacy school the following year because I was in my last year, my senior year of high school. I went off to pharmacy school the next year to a university. So I had to apply and, all those things to get into the university. And then I went there for 6 years.
Okay.
So pharmacy here in the United States is actually a doctorate. You have a doctoral degree. Some other countries, it's not that way. And when it first started, it wasn't that way either. It was a bachelor's degree. So it was like a 4 or 5 year degree. Now it's 6 to 8 years, depending on the school that you go to.
That's a lot.
Yes, yes,
It's hard. It's not easy.
yes,
People think
yes,
now, no, it's easy to work like that, but no, it's a career, right? You have to study
yes.
hard. It's like any other career. And that's really interesting when you say that you were in school, you were like a senior in high school, right? And then
Yes.
you had to study. Because here in Brazil, I'm not sure if Lupita already mentioned to you, but here we have the habit of studying at the age of 15 and 16. We study and we work at the same time. So it's
Okay.
like we study in the morning, and no, sorry, we work in the morning and we study at night. So
Okay.
it's really complicated. It's not easy to
Yeah.
work and study at the same time since at a young age and everything like that. I was gonna ask, was it too hard for you to study and work at the same time? How did you
It
handle that?
it was because for us, it's not common for high schoolers to work.
Hmm.
Some do, some don't. But for us, our school system is designed for us to go to school in the morning. So
Mhm.
school is usually from anywhere between 7:30 a.m. till probably about 2:33 p.m.
Okay.
And so that's pretty much a good chunk of your day is spent in school. And then in the afternoon, if you have time, you can have a job, and depends on their schedule too, if they can use you, because, jobs usually have certain shifts. So, in the afternoon, I would come in around 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., work until 10 or 11, and then, go home, go to sleep, and go back to work. But I didn't work every day. So most people who are in high school don't work every day. They may work like maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And that's just if they have a job. It's even more rare for somebody to work every day in high school and go to school every day.
And the internships are usually paid? Like people pay you for the internship, or no, it's just for the training purposes and you just work as a volunteer, and how is it?
So they have different terms, which all pretty much are internships. So you can be a volunteer where you don't get paid, and the company likes that because they don't have to pay you.
Yeah.
And it benefits the volunteer because in order to get into a university, you have to have volunteer hours. So you have to have a certain amount of hours to get into school. For some scholarships, you have to have a certain amount of hours. And it's a lot. I want to say it's probably like 150 or 200 hours. So people start volunteering, from like their first year in high school, and they do a little bit every year to try and make up those hours. They recommend to people, don't wait until your last year to start getting your hours. So you don't have to have it to graduate, but you do have to have it to get accepted into university. So that's the volunteer. And then you have internships, and so companies usually differ between an internship or just being an employee. They're both employees, but sometimes they have internship programs where you get to work with certain managers and you get to work on certain projects in addition to doing like what the regular staff do. So that's what like an internship will usually incorporate projects. Or you can work for that same company just as a worker, as an employee. You don't necessarily get the projects to help boost your resume, but you do get the experience.
I understand. Yeah. Wow. And would you consider this area, this pharmaceutical area, too required in the United States? I'm going to just explain what I mean by that. For example, I have a degree here in Brazil in international trade. When I started studying in college, I remember that it was about 50% in the course, and after 2-3 months, there were like half of it, like 25 people studying. People give up on the course.
Yeah.
How is it like in this area? Is the same thing or
Very
no?
similar. Yeah,
Very similar.
very similar. So we have a word. It's actually it's a long word. I wonder if maybe I can type it for you. It's called matriculation.
Matriculation. I got you.
Yeah, matriculation. So usually the colleges will say, are you going to be able to matriculate through the program? And so not everyone does. And especially in pharmacy, I would say, man, I don't remember what our class started off with, but usually by time we finish, it's at least half of the class. At least half of the class that usually finish.
Yeah, that's
and
horrible.
Those programs are really intense because you could only fail like 3 classes in your whole like time there.
Otherwise, you lose the whole semester.
Yes.
You lose all the whole semester. Oh my God.
Yeah, you're out of the program after the 3rd class, like because you have, so the way pharmacy is, the actual professional graduate part of pharmacy school is 4 years. But before that, you have either 2 years of prerequisites to get accepted, or some schools require 4 years to get accepted. That's why I say it's anywhere between 6 to 8 years. So I was in a program that was is not common either. they actually combined the pre-pharmacy with the pharmacy for a total of 6 years. So the 2 years, I was the first 2 years before I was in the graduate part, I was already accepted into pharmacy, but I still had to complete my prerequisites before I could actually start my pharmacy courses. In that, and those people who started with me, a lot of them did not get the grades they needed to continue on. So they automatically fell out. So then you have your actual pharmacy curriculum that starts, and that's even more intense. So as those years continue, your first year, your second year, by your third year, the class is significantly smaller. In those last 4 years of the actual pharmacy curriculum, you can only fail 3 classes in those last 4 years, and you can only repeat 2 of the 3.
Wow.
And then that's it. If you don't, see, the good thing with the pre-pharmacy is that they're basic classics. It's like biology, chemistry. So even if you don't get to pharmacy, you can use it maybe for nursing or medical school or
something that
like
had to do with the medical professional. Let's say.
Yeah. But once you get into the pharmacy program, those courses are not like regular standard courses, or like what we would call golden rule courses. That's kind of what they describe those basic courses, golden rule. So those courses, once we get into actual pharmacy school, they're not like biology. They're like pharmacokinetics or pharmacodynamics. Like they're specific to pharmacy.
Many areas inside one area, let's say.
Yes. And so if you get, let's say, to your second year or your third year and you fail out, none of those classes count towards anything. You basically have to start over in a whole nother like area.
Imagine you put so much effort into that, and then, in other words, you have to study hard, because otherwise you're not gonna pass, you're gonna fail. And speaking about this, let me ask you, is it too expensive to study in the United States, a career?
Oh my gosh, it is so ridiculous.
Oh my
so
goodness.
Ridiculous.
But is it possible to get like scholarships? Because here we can get, is it possible?
It is possible to get scholarships. They even they have things like scholarships, which are usually based off of your academic work, or it can also be based off of athletics. So people get in fact, at my school, we actually had a lot of Brazilian players who got scholarships because our volleyball team was like all Brazilian, all of it. All of it was Brazil.
We love sports.
In Brazil. Yeah. So they got scholarships to go to school there. And it was an athletic scholarship. So a lot of people do get that. My brother got an athletic scholarship when he went off to school. And then I got an academic scholarship. Some people also get music scholarships. Yeah, you get music scholarships too.
At least we have other options, right? If you have a talent for something, maybe I can take advantage of this, and you know. Yeah. Yes. That's nice. That's nice.
And then the fees are different. So you have like, if you're in state, if you're native to this state, then you have in-state tuition. If you go to school, like let's say, I'm going to go to school in Georgia, then that's another state. I'm going to pay out of state tuition. So it's higher. It's sometimes double the cost. And if you're an international student, I hope you're here on a scholarship.
Yeah, because it's too expensive, and no, I can imagine it. It's a lot. It's a lot. Phylecia, tell us a little bit about the challenge that you face on your daily routine. I know you love that. You love what you do, and it's good when we love what we do. It becomes easier, let's say, but at the same time, of course, people are human. We sometimes we mess it up. And tell us, how is it to handle with people, sick people? Is it too hard, complicated? How is it, this routine?
Yeah, so I tell people all the time, because people believe that they understand that mistakes happen in jobs. You go to the store, they give you the wrong change back. They understand, they might be upset, but they understand that happens. You go, anywhere, you go, the restaurant messes up your order. They might be upset, but they understand that happens. It is still a job. We are still human. We are going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Just like any other job. And so people sometimes don't give us, have patience with that. They expect perfection, and we try to be as perfect as we can because we know we're dealing with lives. But at the end of the day, we are human, so we are going to make a mistake. What helps is that we have different people who have different roles, even within pharmacy. So even within pharmacy, we have pharmacists who specify in different clinical areas. So for example, you have neurology, you have pharmacists that specialize in neurology, pharmacists that specialize in emergency medicine and pediatrics. You also have pharmacists who specialize in safety, med safety. So they make sure that the systems that the hospital has in place protects the patients, but it also protects the workers, like the nurses and the pharmacists, from making an error that can be repeated because it's a system error. So we have people who are specialized in that aspect. We have people who are specialized in making sure that we have the supply chain, that we're actually, using what we can get, because right now supply chain is an issue for everybody. And if we can't get something in, that we're at least making other people aware that there's a lot of communication, say, hey, we can't get this medication. You need to start to strategize what other medications you can use for your patients in this particular area. So everyone has their part, but we all have to communicate and work together in order to prevent those errors from happening.
The medicines over there in the United States, they are expensive in general, if you would say, or no, the government, it depends on the medicine we can give you for free. How does it work
They
there?
are expensive. So especially when you're like in retail pharmacy, and you're filling a prescription for a patient to take home, those can be very, very expensive. There's actually been a lot of talk, especially in the last several years, and I think it's been more since COVID, really, about the cost of medications, people not even being able to afford their insulin, something that they need.
Yeah.
People not being able to afford, like, to get an inhaler, for asthma, something they need. And so I will say that I actually just saw recently in some pharmacy news that one of our governmental agencies will be looking into our insurance companies to see, about their reimbursement, their pricing, because it becomes a vicious cycle. The big pharma who makes the medications, they set the prices, and I understand that they have to recoup some of the cost that goes into the research to make the product, in addition to the ingredients and whatnot to make the product. But there's so much secrecy behind how much that really costs. Nobody really knows how much is, how much are you needing to, stay afloat versus how much are you just gouging the public. And so you have that aspect, and then you have insurance, which, the way our system is set up is that you basically have to have insurance in the US. Like, we just now, and since the last, 6 years, had an opportunity where if you're not employed, you can get insurance. Otherwise, still to this day, decent insurance is tied to your employment. So if you don't have a job, you don't have good insurance. And before, if you didn't have a job, you didn't have any insurance. So, when you have insurance involved, then the drug companies can also increase the price, because insurance companies can pay more than the average person can pay. Yeah. So now the insurance companies are paying out more, but they also have to meet their, bottom dollar. They also have to show some sort of a profit. And so then they start to pass off those costs to the people who are paying for their insurance, the patients. So now the patients start to see increasing costs. And, before maybe they only paid $10 and the insurance paid the other $90. Now they're paying $20 because the insurance company is only paying $80. And so that's where you start to see those different aspects of our healthcare system really starting to fall apart, especially recently. It's really starting to fall apart.
The pandemic and everything, and that's horrible. And are there the generic medicines and original medicines? Because here we have, and the generic are the same formula, but it's
Yes.
cheaper.
Yes, we do have that. We do have
Okay.
generic and we have our brand. Sometimes companies can get around because our laws are so strict. Sometimes companies can get around that because there's certain medications that have to be within a certain percentage of similarity between the generic and the brand before they will, and that differs. So for like Tylenol, you only have to be within a 10% margin of error. But if it's like something like let's say it's something like what we would call like a biologic, like something that comes from like human tissue or something like, or some sort of tissue-based product, it would, that margin of error is less, it's like 5%. So now, you know, they may not necessarily call it a generic, even though it meets the 10% rule of, you know, most products, but because it falls in a different class of drug, it can't be called a generic because the rule for that particular class of drug is 5%, and it's not going to meet 5%. So then they consider it a different drug, but it's still the same drug. So it's still
Yeah.
expensive. It's a little less expensive, but it's still expensive. So our regulation sometimes costs some of these issues with the costs.
Yeah, that's horrible. And speaking about the pandemic, I want to talk about this topic a little bit. I know United States was a country like Brazil that we got so much affected by the pandemic in every way. And when it comes to, for example, a lot of people lost their jobs, but I imagine that in the hospitals, people actually needed staff to work, because I imagine that a lot of people quit their jobs because they were afraid of working with sick people. How did you handle this? How did you go through this situation yourself?
Yeah, so like in the beginning, I think everybody was afraid. I was a little afraid too, but you know, I just personally just got to a point where I was like, hey, you know, this is my career, and if you know what happens
Accept.
happens. Yeah, it's just, it is what it is. Luckily, surprisingly, I never ended up with COVID, like ever.
Really?
And at the time I
Oh.
actually was an emergency room pharmacist, so I actually was working in the ER.
Directly
So
with people that had
yeah,
COVID.
and I never got it, so I don't know, but yeah, that was an issue in the beginning. But I think probably within the first 2 months or so, people, you know, kind of, no, it didn't really bother them anymore. It bothered them, but you know, it was okay. They still worked. What ended up being an issue really was that our hospital systems got so overwhelmed with the number of people coming in that caused it to be short staffed.
And you
And
have to
then
work double, let's say. You have to work.
yes,
Oh my
yes. And then when
goodness.
the staff started getting sick, that increased the burden, the demand of more staff. And so what ended up happening was that you had a lot of different areas in the United States that were paying more money
Okay.
for more than average for nurses, for respiratory therapists to travel. You have travel agencies that you join the travel agency, they send you on a 13-week assignment, and you're getting paid, you know, your whole year's salary in 13 weeks. Yeah, that, and you're getting like your room and board paid for, you're getting your, you know, everything, travel paid for, plus your whole salary for the year paid for if you just work these 13 weeks. And so people were racking up the money. And so it created this issue now a couple years later, because now we're in 2022, where nurses, we have a huge, like we already had a shortage of nurses to begin with. Now we have a huge shortage of nurses, because now it's like, why would I go back to my hospital, you know, my hospital pay rate, when I can be making triple what I was making before, you know, by staying with this travel agency that's willing to pay me this extra money. And so now, even and because everybody was using travel agents, you could literally have left your hospital that you work in, you know, where you live, go join a travel agency and then get rehired by that same hospital that you left, but now getting paid 3 times as much because you're with a travel agency. So we have a huge issue now that's starting to like boil over. Hospitals are losing money because they're paying for these travel agents. Now you also have to count, okay, the cost to train people constantly, you know, because you're not keeping the same people. And so it's proven to be a whole nother issue now.
Yeah, I can imagine totally. I got really surprised because I just heard the news about the how it works over there. But when we talk to someone that really lives there and explains and shows us the point, what really it happens over there, it's totally different, right? We have other idea about this, and I appreciate everything you're telling us today. I want to ask you if you have plans for the future, if you want to study another career, maybe. No, you're gonna focus on your career. What are your plans for the future?
No, I've been a pharmacist since 2010, and I am ready to roll on out of that. So I'm ready to be done with it.
The worst we already, I think the worst we already lived, which was the pandemic. Of course, many other diseases are gonna come in the future. That's obvious. But I wish you good luck on this. And I want to ask one last question. If you could give a piece of advice for someone that wants to be a pharmacist, and it's a young person and he wants to study, and what would that be, the advice?
I would say work or volunteer first in a pharmacy for at least 3 months before going into that
to make
career.
Sure, right? If
yes,
really what you want. And
yes, I'm over our intern program at our hospital, and we just started with 5 new interns in December. 1 went to pediatrics and 4 stayed with the adult side where I am. By May, 2 quit. The one in pediatrics quit like pharmacy school altogether. He said, this isn't what I want to do. And the one that was an adult quit the intern program because she said that it was too much. And the thing is, this is the easiest it's going to be. So, so I highly recommend volunteering or, you know, working in a pharmacy first.
Once you're in it, you can't stop because it's gonna take. Yeah, I understand. All right, I think that's it, Phylecia. Thank you so much one more time, once again, for accepting this. That's amazing to share this knowledge, man, about different areas. And I wish you good luck on your career. It's not easy. People understand now better. And I wish you good luck as well on your plans with the Spanish language. I know you do. You're doing really good. Lupita tells about you, talks about you all the time.
Thank you. And I understood you in the beginning. So I was, even though it was kind of fast, I still understood you. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's nice, because sometimes you only are focused on one person, right? Lupita's accent and everything. But when you hear someone else speaking, it's different. But that's nice to hear that you understood. So we're going to finish right now the interview. I want to thank you so much. Gracias a todos por haber escuchado la entrevista con Phylecia. Bueno, entonces nos vemos en el próximo episodio de Cough With. Hasta luego. Chao.
Bye.
All right.